Hey everyone, this is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology, and today we're going to take a look at Saturn square with Uranus, which is perfecting this week, right around Christmas time. If you're celebrating Christmas, you'll get the company of Venus through its retrograde conjoining with Pluto, as well as Saturn's square to Uranus. So this is just a massive combination of planetary transits happening at the same time. We're going to start taking a look at it today. We're going to meditate a little bit on the archetypal combination of Saturn-Uranus day by taking a look at an I Ching hexagram, an excerpt from the Upanishads. We're going to also bring in some excerpts from one of my favorite essays called "The Wreck of Time" by Annie Dillard, and just meditate a little bit on what this process has been in the past year of Saturn square Uranus, and also some ways that we can think about this combination this week and in the next couple of weeks as this archetypal transit is still in the air. So that's what we'll do today. I'm still hoping Raf and I kind of mixed up our time zones, but I'm hoping that he'll be here tomorrow or Thursday to take a look at the Saturn Uranus dynamic through the houses, and he'll be doing some tarots. He is really masterful when it comes to reading the cards, and I'll be doing astrology. So we'll pair that together a little bit this week. And yeah, so before we dive into that, I want to let you all know that we've raised the support of 841 backers. We have about 10 days left to go in the Kickstarter, and we still need the support of 526 backers to meet our goal this year. So if you are able to donate, contribute, pitch in, $5, $10 donation, everything helps. There's also a lot of really cool rewards. Remember, you now just have 10 days left to take advantage of getting one of my classes through the Kickstarter, one of my online programs at 50% off from the normal rate when you select one of my programs as a reward for your donation. So right now we have, if you pledge $900 or more, you can attend any of my online courses. These are 1-year advanced programs with over 100 hours worth of classroom content. There's 30 classes on the year. They're about 3 hours long each. We've got 12 guest speakers. We've got tons of breakout study sessions with tutoring, a tutoring staff, a discussion forum, tons of bonus material and optional homework and reading. So it is a deep dive into Hellenistic natal astrology. You can also go into my year 2 program. You can bundle 2 programs together. And now you're getting basically 2 programs for just $100 less than the full tuition cost of 1 program. So it's a great way to save and pair the first and second year programs together if you plan on taking both of my courses, and you can take them at your own pace. Once you start a program, you can keep all the material as long as you want, and anytime you want to take the test, you can just send it in. The classes are held live, but they're all recorded for you, so you can keep the content if you can't attend live. Classes start on Saturdays and Sundays in June and November of 2022, but you can also use them beyond. So if anything were to come up, you can keep it as a credit, and you can try one of the other programs if for some reason you can't make it. Year 2 programs and horary programs start in June. You can bundle these together if you're already in my year 1 program. I also have a readings and passages program, which is an advanced program for people who are interested in learning more about the art and craft of reading for people. That is a year worth of conducting live readings in front of a classroom and breaking down advanced craft discussions about those readings. So I have 4 years worth of content for people who are interested in really going deeply with astrology, or just taking your interest in astrology to the next level. And this is the best deal through the Kickstarter for sure. But also you can pick up a number of different readings. There's a year ahead horoscope reading for your rising sign. There's the Astrology of 2022 exclusive video that I do, a video that teaches you how to develop a mantra meditation practice if you want to start one. So lots of good stuff. We still need about 500 backers to pitch in and support. I hope you will. On a day like today, which are 5 days a week, year round, I do the same thing. I get up in the morning, work out, I do my mantra meditation, I sit down with sacred scriptures as well as my astrological references, spend some time focusing, getting myself right, and then I write my talk for the day, and then I produce it, and then we distribute it. That's about half of my working day year round free content that I give to everyone. So If you appreciate it, if you like it, if you share it, if you subscribe, click the notification bell, that all helps. You send a prayer to us that this channel would still be fruitful and spiritually centered in the year ahead, that helps. If you pitch in and donate, that helps because we got a staff of 10 people. This is a big part of how I support myself and my business. So really appreciate it if you're able to. Just 10 days left. So let's see if we can meet our goal this year and cross the finish line. All right. Well, that being said, let's go to the real-time clock and just refresh ourselves on what's happening this week with this major transit of Saturn and Uranus. And then we'll dive into talking about this one. So here is the real-time clock. And what I want you to notice is Saturn at 10:49 right now and Uranus at 11:08. So what we are essentially saying is that if we advance this just a couple of days, this is Thursday, December 23rd, into Friday, December 24th, Saturn will move through the square with Uranus. Of course, it's present within a degree all the way to, first week of January. At the same time, this week, Venus will retrograde through its conjunction with Pluto, and that will happen on December 25th on Christmas Day. So it is most definitely a powerful week, powerful signature for the holidays. So I'm like, every time I think about it, I'm imagining like Christmas boxes flying across the room and like open warfare under the Christmas tree lights, like someone spiked the eggnog. Uncle Jimmy is like, in the corner talking to Jesus with his eggnog spiked. Everyone is battling. So I'm like, I'm hoping it goes well for everybody, but it's a pretty intense energy. And what I want to do first of all is just talk about this from a philosophical point of view, and then ask some guiding questions for us that came out of the meditation I did this morning on this transit. So Saturn and Uranus can speak to two very different realities. Let's talk about Saturn first. Saturn can be described as the march of time. Okay, so when you think about Saturn, people always say, well, it's the Lord of Karma, it's time. It's like, well, what do you mean by that, right? What do you mean by that? In the Vedic philosophical tradition, time is actually a quality of God. It's like a dimension or aspect of God. And time is also talked about as a weapon of God, as a way that God has of enlightening wandering souls, as well as a way that God has of annihilating things, of constantly creating and destroying things, both creation and destruction through time, the weapon of enlightenment through time, also as a quality of reality that is itself said to be anadi, which means without beginning. So time itself is described as beginningless. Now, time can come to an end insofar as Vishnu may inhale all of the galaxies back into Vishnu's body and then exhale them back out, and temporarily the time-bound world is gone. But then Vishnu will breathe them back out and time moves again. And when it moves, it's always been moving. It's a strange thing to think about. It's almost like imagining a fire that's always been, and yet this fire is like breathing. It's as though, the fire is kind of pulsing in and out. And you can also imagine time. Plato said time is the moving image of eternity, that there's something about time that reflects the nature of something timeless, that the way things happen in time reflects something of timelessness. So you can almost imagine that time is like a river that's moving in both directions at once as well. Time is described by ancient mystics as circular, eternal, without beginning, like a river moving in a circle and moving. There are currents moving in both directions in the circle simultaneously at different levels or different depths or something like that. So when you think about time, it's important to first give it some body and give it some dimensionality, because when we think of time and we attribute that to Saturn, often we're thinking in a very linear manner. We're thinking about a kind of time that moves forward along a linear straight line from the past into the future. But when ancient astrologers thought about time, that's not the way they thought about it. They thought about cycles and seasons of time. And they thought about the soul, the eternal, immortal soul, as at its worst, trapped in time, trapped in this circular, multi-dimensional, multi-leveled, backward and forward flowing dimension of God, of God's enlightenment weapon, right? It's a little heavy, but pretty beautiful and interesting to think about too. One of my favorite mantras from the Sri Ishopanishad says, the wise have explained to us that one result is derived from the culture of vidya, which means like illumination or knowledge. And it is said that a different result is obtained from the culture of avidya, which is like darkness or illusion. Then in the next mantra, says only the person who can learn the processes of illusion and darkness and those of illumination or transcendental knowledge side by side can transcend the influence of repeated birth and death, which is also time, and enjoy the full blessings of immortality, which is also a way of saying enlightenment or vidya and illumination. So that's a beautiful verse. Now, interestingly, Saturn in ancient astrology was not only associated with time and the time bound and this weird river of eternal, like an eternal cycle of dominoes that are knocking each other over. But then as they knock each other over, new ones get up. So it's like this crazy eternal domino sequence. And we think we're getting somewhere. Well, I'm going to do something to be happy. Well, I'm going to do something to avoid pain. But as long as we're playing around in the rivers of time, the sequences will keep moving, and it's not going to be easy to get comfortable or to feel like we've arrived anywhere. This is why so many people end up slapping a meme on their wall at some point that says, it's the journey, not the destination. Because after a while, we start scratching our heads and going like, hey, you notice that this thing like just keeps going? How did we get here? So, so that's the situation we find ourselves in. But Saturn was also the ruler of contemplatives, people who sat long and hard and thought about things. And they thought about things from a distance. They were like, hey, have you ever noticed there's this crazy domino circle, just keeps going and going and going? They reflect upon the nature of things. And as they live their lives moving through the time-bound world, they start simultaneously recognizing its nature and starting to have other kinds of insights that, in a sense, start to illuminate the way that they see the world, starts to illuminate their mind and it gives a perspective that even though we're within time, it's as though we're rising out of it. We're experiencing something about who we are as timeless, eternal beings within the time bound. So, and the Upanishads are pointing this out thousands of years ago. Now, if we don't cultivate that perspective, which is, you could say, the Uranian perspective within the Saturnine. I mean, you don't even really need Uranus necessarily. It's contained within Saturn's ancient significations was the idea that you could be stuck in the prison of time, or you could be a contemplative. You could be a melancholic or a malcontent, or you could be someone who has some kind of transcendental perspective. You're seeing beyond the limitations of this beginningless merry-go-round. But Uranus square Saturn is the presence of illumination in relation to the time bound. You could say that it is the spark that uh, lights the soul up or lights our consciousness up and says, oh, I'm aware within these cycles and circles, within the constraints of the time bound world. um, I'm a little spark. I'm a little Atman. I'm a little spark of God. I'm a little Jiva. I'm aware. I'm awake. And then because the two get together like that, it can create the need or the desire to reframe our lives in terms of a perspective that transcends the ordinary or previously held beliefs that were limited or ways of living our lives that were habitual and that we were stuck in thinking. What was that? I think it was Einstein, or I don't remember who said it, but the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. So Uranus comes along and says, don't do that. Let's change. Let's try something different. It can be this way also of understanding that time is an ally for those who understand that it is eternal. If you think you're going somewhere in time, that you'll get somewhere eventually, that it won't just keep cycling and circling, you're in trouble. But if you see it for what it is, this just eternal dimension of reality. It's just always moving through cycles and circles. You see it like that, then all of a sudden you're free within it, which is precisely what the Upanishads are telling us when they say only the person who understands the nature and processes of the realm of shadows, alongside of cultivating understanding, awareness, and transcendental knowledge, can really be free. So you could say Saturn Uranus is just the lightning strike that we need to help us move out of some conditioned state, some darkened state, into a more enlightened one. That's the ideal, right? What does the world look like when it's just the march of time, when it's nothing more than the march of time and we're lost in it? There's some excerpts from an essay that I want to read you by Annie Dillard called The Wreck of Time. This is a brilliant essay. I think you'll appreciate it. Ted Bundy, the serial killer, after his arrest, could not fathom the fuss. What was the big deal? David Drayle quotes an exasperated Bundy in an essay called Among the Lowest of the Dead. Ted Bundy says, I mean, there are so many people. On April 30th, 1991, on that one day, 138,000 people drowned in Bangladesh. At dinner, I mentioned it to my daughter, who was then 7 years old, that it was hard to imagine 138,000 people drowning. No, it's easy, my 7-year-old said. Lots and lots of dots in blue water. 10 years ago, we thought there were 2 galaxies for each of us alive. Lately, since we loosed the Hubble Space Telescope, we've revised our figures. There are 9 galaxies for each of us. Each galaxy harbors an average of 100 billion suns. In our galaxy, the Milky Way, there are 69 suns for each person alive. The Hubble shows, says a report, that a universe, quote, is at least 15 billion years old. The universe, our universe. 2 galaxies, 9 galaxies, 69 suns, 100 billion suns. These astronomers are nickel and diming us to death. What were you doing on April 30th, 1991, when a series of waves drowned 138,000 people? Where were you when you first heard the astounding, heartbreaking news? Who told you? What were your sensations? Did you weep? Did it last days or weeks? All of my life, I've loved this sight, a standing wave in a boat's wake shaped like a thorn. I've seen it rise from many oceans. I saw it rise from the Sea of Galilee. It was a peak about a foot high. The standing wave broke at its peak and foam slid down its glossy hollow. I watched the foaming wave on the port side. At every instant, we were bringing this boat's motor, this motion, into new water. The stir, as if of life, impelled each patch of water to pinch and inhabit the same crest. Each crest tumbled upon itself and released the slide of white foam. The foam's bubbles popped and dropped into the general sea while they were still sliding down the dark wave. They trailed away always, and always new waters peaked, broke, foamed, and replenished. What I saw was the constant intersection of two wave systems. Lord Kelvin first described them. Transverse waves rise abaft the stern and stream away perpendicular to the boat's direction of travel. Diverging waves course out in a V shape behind the boat. Where the waves converge, two lines of standing crests persists at an unchanging angle to the direction of the boat's motion. We think of these as the boat's wake. I was studying the highest standing wave, the one nearest the boat. It rose from the trough behind the stern and spilled foam. The curled wave crested the clear water and tumbled down. All its bubbles broke, thousands a second, unendingly. I could watch the present. I could see time. On a shore, 8,000 waves break a day. James Trefle, a professor of physics, provides these facts. At any one time, the foam breaking from waves covers 3 and 4% of the Earth's surface. This acreage of foam is equal to the entire continent of North America. God rises up out of the sea like a treasure in the waves, wrote Thomas Merton. We see generations of waves rise from the sea that made them, billions of individuals at a time. We see them dwindle and vanish. If this doesn't astound you, what will? Or what will move you to pity or compassion? 1/10 of the land on Earth is tundra. At any time, it's raining on only 5% of the planet's surface. Lightning strikes the planet about 100 times every second. The insects outweigh us. Our chickens outnumber us 4-1. 1/5 of us are Muslims. 1/5 of us live in China. Every 7th person is a Chinese peasant. Almost 1/10 of us live within range of an active volcano. More than 2% of us were born with a handicap. We humans drink tea over 1 billion cups a day. Among us, we speak 10,000 languages. We are civilized generation number 500 or so, counting from 10,000 years ago. Every 110 hours, 1 million more humans arrive on the planet than die into the planet. 100 million of us are children who live on the streets. Over 100 million of us live in countries where we hold no citizenship. 23 million of us are refugees. 16 million of us live in Cairo. 12 million fish for a living from small boats. 7.5 million of us are 1 million of us are a crew on freezer trawlers. Nearly 1,000 of us a day take our own lives. Head spinning numbers cause the mind to go slack, but our minds cannot go slack. How can we think straight if our minds go slack? We agree that we want to think straight. 2 million children die every year from diarrhea, 800,000 from the measles. Do we blink? Stalin starved 7 million Ukrainians in 1 year. Pol Pot killed 1 million Cambodians. The flu epidemic of 1918 killed 21 or 22 million people. Shall this go on? Or do you suffer, as Teilhard de Chardin did, the sense of being an atom lost in the universe? Or do you not suffer from this sense? How about what journalists call compassion fatigue, reality fatigue? At what limit for you do other individuals blur, vanish? How old are you? I love this essay so much. She goes on, and it's a brilliant essay, but I just wanted to give you a feel for it, because if we live in a world that's just bound to time, especially when we think it's linear and we think that we're getting somewhere in it, we think that there's somewhere in the future that won't eventually fall apart, just like the waves are rising in the wake she describes and disintegrating simultaneously. This world is like, in a sense, even though it doesn't feel like it, even though we have to deliberately take time for meditation or contemplation to see it, This world is like a concrescence of waves that hit each other and break simultaneously over and over. It doesn't feel like it unless we sit down and take notice of it. If we take no notice of it, then we become objectified by it. Eventually, we will be just one of those numbers. One of the things that the Vedic tradition says very clearly, the yogic tradition, yoga philosophy tradition, is that most souls at the hour of death are confronted by, not so much, all the bad things I did, but the trivial nature of what I did, the triviality of the way I spent my life. In other words, you'll be struck by the way that you fall into the most mundane and superficial aspects, the constant number clicking of Saturn. Is that what we want when we die? We want to have come to our life and go, well, I really lived. Well, what, what did that living constitute? It constituted a lot of capitalistic freedom, the freedom to consume, do what I want, but no, most of us will come to death, and we'll come to death realizing, if we have not lived a soulful life, if we have not invested in a transcendental perspective, if we've not grown that within our heart and soul, we'll come to death and realize that we're nothing more than another little bubble breaking at the end of the day. It's not that that's not sacred. It's not that, bubbles breaking aren't beautiful, that the bubbles breaking, the rising and falling of all things, the coming to be and passing away of all things, isn't in its own way just spectacular. I mean, sometimes you can just look at it. You don't even need to assign any greater meaning to it. You can just appreciate, wow, this is what's happening. But from the standpoint of the ancient mystics who practiced astrology, the problem is that you're an eternal being. And for eternal beings who are recycling in new forms and new bodies, the problem is that one of the reasons that we recycle in new forms and new bodies is that we think that, well, this next new lifetime, this next new endeavor, this next new ambition, this next new project, this next new relationship, this new year, these resolutions, these ambitions, these projects, we think that it will somehow address a longing that we have that can't be addressed as long as the waves are hitting each other and spilling out again. Our bodies will eventually be a part of that wave hitting and spilling out. So we're looking in the wrong place. That's the idea behind the mysticism in the ancient astrological tradition. We're looking in the wrong place. So where do we look for it? Well, let's consider these things. These would be the markers of a real revolution. And I like to think, I drew a hexagram from the I Ching this morning, number 37, called family duties. And there's a hexagram line in it that says, she's the jewel of the home, good fortune. And it's, of course, talking about, if sort of like, it's an ancient way of saying, if mama's not happy, ain't nobody happy in a family unit. But it's also a way of talking about the centrality of yin and the idea that we're always watering something. We're always giving our attention something. Where attention goes, energy flows. Everyone's heard that saying before. And what we foster as the most desirable, the most beautiful, there is a goddess in the center of all of our lives. Put better, there's an altar or like a shrine, and it's a beautiful shrine. It's decorated with all sorts of things. There's deities, there's flowers, there's incense. It's a beautiful room. And all of us are tending to that in one way or another. And that room, really what it is the desire for divinity, the desire for soulfulness. Soulfulness isn't just some kind of, monotheistic, single-pointed or monistic goal. It's not just some kind of pure white light that we're just hoping to go home to, because isn't this world just so such a curse? Isn't time such a curse? No. We like the variegation of this world. We like the infinite multitudes of this world. The soul likes it. But it's looking for the eternal and divine experience of those things versus its eternal lost ramblings and wanderings, banging its head on the wall in time, the prisons of time, shackled, trying to get a different result, doing the same things over and over, not recognizing I'm a spirit soul. But the soul itself and the need to address it, that's the, that's the goddess at the center of us. And so with Venus also retrograding in a conjunction with Pluto as Saturn squares Uranus, it's like there's an opportunity to look at what we are watering at the center. This hexagram in the I Ching, number 37, says, she is the jewel of the home, great good fortune. And again, it's talking about that soulful center that holds a family together. It could be the fire in the middle of the home, but it's also knowing that there was a saying, that my grandma said, and I heard it lots of places too, but something like this, which is, whatever a woman waters grows. So women, water the right things in your family, like water the good things that you want to grow, and you'll see them grow. And it was sort of a way of saying, like, that what a woman cares for and nurtures in a home or family will flourish and grow. Now, you can take that or leave that as a literal thing. I don't, it's not, really, to me, it's just metaphorical, because I take that also as something that's very important for myself. There's a lot of goals that I have and a lot of ambitions, but what I care for, what I nurture, what I pay attention to with, like, there's a little matriarch in the center of my heart, and what she waters inside of me, that's what's going to grow. So I have to be very careful about it, because she has a lot of power. But if I'm not awake to what I'm watering within, then good things won't grow. So I think Venus Pluto with its retrograde at the same time of Saturn Uranus is saying, are you nurturing the right things? Are you caring for the right things? Are you that feminine energy of what we are attracted to, what we give our attention to, what we water, what we nurture, what we care for, what we love? Does it need to shift or change somehow? Because if we're to awaken from the dead, numerical weightiness of life, the getting dragged along by mundane numbers, the astrophysicists nickel and diming us to death, like Annie Dillard says, right? If we're to get out of that, then it requires two things. It requires, some kind of spiritual illumination, a transcendental perspective. And it's fine to get all Promethean and excited about that, but more practically, that means that every day we have to nurture something different. We have to nurture soulfulness, the relational, caring, feminine component of the soul that takes away, that makes reality a living relationship, that the cosmos becomes a living being filled with interdependent relationships that need to be tended and cared for, so that something can grow and flourish that we call soulfulness. And that soulfulness is what outweighs the insects and the chickens and the humans. It strikes faster than all the lightning hitting the earth simultaneously. And it fills those waves hitting each other, cresting and breaking 24/7 meaninglessly. Otherwise, it fills them with sparklies. You know what I mean? It makes the whole world sparkle with beauty and wonder and joy and divinity. But it all boils down to, what do we care for? What do we love? What do we give our time and attention to? And a reorientation of our desires to be attracted to something that is more valuable for the soul. Consider this. Let's use that little analogy that what you water grows, and that at the center of all of our lives is an altar. Here's how you can tell what your altar actually looks like. What do you spend the most time doing? That's probably the altar at the middle of your psychic home. No judgments. It's just a way of getting in touch with what our altar is, and maybe a shift that can be made. What do you spend the most time doing? That's probably where the altar is, or what the altar looks like. What do you spend the most time thinking about? That is probably at least one of, or maybe a few of, the deities that are on that altar. What do you spend the most time feeling? What kinds of feelings do you entertain or take in? Or what kinds of emotional states do you have? Those are like the flowers on that altar. What do you spend the most time talking about? That's like the incense wafting through the room. What do you spend the most time concerned with? Now, concern could be a good thing or maybe not a good thing. Worried or concerned, we'll call it. That's the way that you attend to the altar. What do you spend the most time doing with your body every day? That becomes the scent, the physical feeling of the room. What do you spend the most time looking at with your eyes every day? That becomes the posture of your meditation, the seat that you're on, maybe. Who do you surround yourself with every day? The people. Those are the religious or spiritual devotees in the room with you. Those are your fellow worshipers. And what do you read most of the time? Or maybe you don't read, but if you do, what do you take in information wise? What kind of information do you take in? That's your sacred scripture. Now, I'm not, by saying all this, suggesting, hey, look, just, you need to overhaul your whole life instantly and make sure all of those are perfect. Revolution comes incrementally, especially with Saturn Uranus, because we slowly shift what we are doing, what we're thinking about, what we're feeling, and what we're talking about, what we're worried about, what we're doing with our bodies, what we're reading or looking at, who we are surrounding ourselves with. And most of the time, the change doesn't happen because we start by going, let me eliminate the bad things or the unhealthy things that don't constitute soulfulness. But instead, the changes start to happen because in each of those different areas, we add little things that are just a little bit healthier or more soulful. For example, we spend a little bit more time doing something that produces peace, contentment, reflection, that nurtures our inner life. We spend a little bit more time thinking about the things and people we're grateful for. We spend a little bit more time feeling satisfied. We have to choose it, but we can feel satisfied. We can spend a little bit more time feeling thankful, or we can spend a little bit more time with any emotion, directing that emotion back to divinity and saying thank you for it. We can spend a little bit more time talking about our inner life, what we're growing, how we're growing, or what we're learning with other people. We can spend more time worried about the safety, health, beauty, care, compassion, empathy. We can start spending more time worried about people around us that we love, and not in a clinging, crazy way, but we can, if we're going to spend time worried about anything, then let's worry about the people we love. We can spend, I'm just giving a suggestion, but what we spend the most time doing with our body, well, we can spend a little bit more time meditating, taking care of our body, exercising, eating a little bit, just even a little bit better food or a little less food. What we spend the most time looking at, well, we can turn off the TV or the screens, or at least find some spiritual content on them. Who we surround ourselves with. At least once or twice a month, make sure you take a little bit of time to spend time with that friend who's one of the only ones you can have that deeper conversation with. And if you're not reading anything, you feel like you should, pick up something spiritual or enlightening, illuminating. So we do little things like this incrementally. They make really big changes to our lives. And we go from the feeling of impersonal, objectifying, the weight of time and numbers, to a soulful reality where time becomes the moving image of eternity. It's not just reduce or get rid of toxic things, but slowly add soulful things. Then the objectifying things drop off. And as the Gita tells us, as all of the yogic literature tells us, we come to the hour of death. And what we realize in the hour of death is that we lived a soulful life. that we cared and watered and nurtured good things and good people. And in that moment, that is said to be the thing that sends the soul eventually to completely different worlds that are not bound by time. But that until we are, remember, this place isn't evil or bad. In the ancient mystical traditions, the ones that I appreciate, this world is a place of learning. So this world is a place where we can gradually learn that eventually the truth is that we're worn down by the gears of time if we keep trying to get some result out of it that's not possible. It just grinds us down. But we don't need to get ground down so much, do we? In 2022, does the, people are like, oh, I'm so 2020 and 2021 were so hard. What's next? I'm like, it's more hard. It's more hard. It's always more hard. 2022, 2023, 2024, the next 15 years are going to be hard. It doesn't get better, right? It doesn't get better. The same kinds of seasons of challenge and darkness and disease and sickness have always been a major part of this reality. Let's think back about some of those numbers that Annie Dillard gave, right? So it doesn't change, we change, right? The consciousness changes in relation to time. So I hope that this has been a useful way of thinking about Saturn, Uranus, and that it gives you some way of surveying your life and going like, where do I need like a strong gardener? I think of like a goddess roaming the gardens of my heart, just being like, this needs more water over here. This needs more water. And I listen to her, things go well for my soul. You know what I mean? So I hope you can find that figure, however you may personify that figure, but I hope that you may find that figure in your heart in these next couple of weeks, especially over the holidays here. It's a good time of year to live soulfully. It's a moment where a lot of people's hearts are a little bit more open right now if you're celebrating holidays. So anyway, that's what I've got for today. I hope you guys have a good one. Don't forget Kickstarter. We're still needing 526 backers. If you love this channel, if you love these sermons from the stars, please pitch in. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you again tomorrow. Bye.